Cool. All right, we are live. We'll let some people start trickling in. Feel free to say hi in the chat. Really excited to present this morning with Mike. And we'll give everyone a couple minutes before we get started just to kind of trickle in. But Mike, you're joining us from Georgia this morning?
That's right, Atlanta area. So I think it's hot all the way around.
I would say, yeah, it's hot everywhere. I'm over in the Bay Area right now with our lack of AC. It's been lovely and fun, but a little cooler this morning.
Yeah. We don't even try to go without the AC over here. So it's not even worth the attempt.
Cool. For those joining, we'll get started in a minute or so. We will be recording this and sharing the recording this later today or tomorrow for everyone. So if you have to drop for any reason, you will still get that recording. All right. Got some people popping in. Love to see that. And another housekeeping item, if anyone has questions throughout the presentation, there's a little questions tab in the bottom right corner to the left of the chat button. Feel free to write those in there and we'll address them through, we have a colleague of mine who will address them in chat, or Mike and I will address them live in the webinar as well. So any questions that come up, feel free to ask and we'll try to get to them. Give people another 30 seconds or so and we can go ahead and get started. Alrighty, I'm sure more people will trickle in, but really looking forward to getting kicked off. So we'll just go ahead and jump into it. First of all, thank you everyone for joining. As I mentioned earlier, this will be recorded and we'll share the recording out either today or tomorrow. Any questions that come up, feel free to just drop them in that bottom right questions button to the left of the chat bot or chat button. But otherwise with that, we'll get started here. So my name is Jake. I'm on the Retool marketing team, and I'm joined today by Mike Madison, VP of Product at Westhill. Westhill is an end-to-end solution for filing insurance claims, vetting and hiring contractors, and then managing the entire home repair process in one location. As a marketplace business serving three distinct participants, the insurance policyholders, insurance carriers, and contractors, Westhill handles a ton of complex handoffs between the three participants, and they do this through a mixture of internal tooling and ops and support team members. Really excited to turn this over to Mike more. Mike's going to first talk about his background. Really curious to know, Mike, if you have an engineering background as well. His role and responsibility at Westhill, kind of how he, foreshadowing a bit, but how he rebuilt Westhill's entire internal tooling process and the impact that doing so had on his business. So, Mike, with that, I'll turn it over to you. Love to hear about, first of all, your background, any kind of engineering chops you had, and before you got to this role. And then would love for you to go a bit deeper on your business and, what your kind of marketplace ecosystems and the internal tooling, or I guess tooling stack entirely looks like.
Sounds great. Well, first of all, thank you everybody for taking the time today. I'm really excited to share more about what we've built over the last 6 months or so at Westhill. So as Jake mentioned, I'm Mike Madison. I've worked in technology roles and software development for about the past 20 years. 15 years of those in product management roles. To Jake's question about an engineering background, I've fallen into that category of deep enough to be dangerous for a long time. So I've got some SQL and .NET background, JavaScript, a fair amount of a little bit of freelance development, web development. Dabbled in some mobile over the years. So I've touched just about every portion of the stack from top to bottom, but really have my passion in product management and helping teams really get the most value out of their business and building solutions that solve real problems for operational teams and for customers. So as Jake mentioned, our business Westhill actually helps to connect insurance carriers and their policyholders with contractors, with certified contractors, so home repair contractors. So for example, in about 95% of cases in the United States, if you have a hailstorm come through and it damages the roof of your house, you'll file a claim with your insurance company. They may send somebody out, send out an adjuster. They'll take a few pictures, write you an estimate, give you a check, and say good luck. And then it's up to you as the policyholder to figure out, okay, how am I going to find a contractor to do this work? And hopefully they'll do the work for the amount that the check was written for. So we help to solve that problem by connecting the insurance company and contractors throughout the process from end to end. So, so we've really spent quite a bit of time over the past few years building out our technology platform so that we can provide a fully digital end-to-end experience where policyholders can see the status of their claim, the status of their repair. They can get connected with one or more contractors. They can choose the contractor that they want to work with. And then we provide contractors with tools to be able to manage and provide updates on the status of their of the repair. And we do all of this in an environment that's completely secure. We have our ISO 27001 certification and SOC 2 certifications. And we do all of this while complying with and providing deep data and feedback back to the carrier so that we can track every step of our workflow, identify problems, and then build targeted solutions to make the experience better for policyholders and for our insurance carrier partners.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike. And, I think now with that, we'll kind of go with the peek under the hood behind all the fun operational stuff that Mike and his team have built. And Mike, I'll turn it back to you to.
Sure. So a little bit about our story. So we call our Retool project internally our 3.0 project. So the first two iterations were built out over the first couple of years of the company's life. So Westhill is about 5 years old. The first few years we built out an initial MVP with a couple of insurance carriers, and then we went to market with that first version. In 2021, we built out more and more enhancements and operational improvements to that tool set. And between about August of 2021 and February of 2022, we realized that we were spending about 60 to 70% of our engineering capacity and product and development time on the operational tool set, our internal admin UI. And you can see from the diagram that Jake's pulled up right here that our application actually services and provides user interfaces for a variety of different stakeholders. So yes, we have our internal admin UI, which is the most feature-rich and complex interface that we provide, but we also provide external interfaces for policyholders, for program administrators, and for contractors to be able to manage, view, and track their data. And so as we got into early 2022, we started looking at ways that we could deliver more value to remain competitive in our market space, to actually deliver faster and basically provide a strong intellectual property position in our area. And so we realized, well, we're spending all of this time on internal UIs. Let's look at how we can go faster, and let's look at how we can build some of these capabilities for our internal teams in such a way that it doesn't cost us as much, but we can still provide the same or even faster level of roadmap velocity than what we had before. And so we made the decision we also had some back-end performance considerations, just some looming technology issues on our back-end technology stack. So we decided to migrate out of our existing technology cloud stack over into Google Cloud Platform. And we started looking at low-code providers. And ultimately, we landed on Retool. We chose Retool for a few different reasons. One being it provided the best overall mix of speed to market capability, out of the box build speed, but also long-term flexibility and our ability to get down into the code where we wanted to. So it allowed us to choose where we wanted to stay high level, but also where we wanted to dig in deep and create custom components, custom user experiences, custom logic, and so ultimately, we ended up making the decision to adopt Retool primarily, at least initially, for our admin UI. And we went into the project assuming that, all right, we'll implement Retool in an enterprise on-premise hosted context that we deployed inside of Google Cloud Platform. And we'll still continue to use traditional development teams for our external interfaces. After about a month into the project, we had launched a separate standalone proof of concept product for another market space, so another vertical within our business. And we realized that we could save time and effort on the user management, user authentication experience over building a lot of that tool set ourselves. So rather than building identity management and forgot password flows and user registration and activation flows through traditional code, we made the decision to expand the scope of our Retool project beyond just the internal tool set. So what you're looking at here in this diagram, we have now fully implemented across the board. So every one of our interfaces, both internal for our admins and our customer-facing external UIs, are now fully implemented in Retool with a Google Cloud backend. So those interfaces communicate to Google Cloud through a combination of GraphQL and REST APIs, and also directly to the Retool Postgres database. So I'll stop there for a second there, Jake, and see if anybody has any questions or.
Yeah, we're getting a few questions actually. First of all, I realize that I apologize that this slide is very small and kind of hard to read, but Mike, I'll just kind of briefly do a talk track over it. But given that Westhill is a marketplace business, they have their internal facing ops and support team members that are spending time using the leftmost admin UI that his team was spending 60% of their engineering resources on kind of maintaining. And then on the right three sides, you've got the external users, the policy holders, the contractors, and then the actual, what would that be, insurance carriers as well. And they each have a slew of different tools that they're using, that they kind of were using as well. Mike, you originally kind of came across Retool thinking that you wanted a way to rebuild that admin UI on the far left, just the internal facing admin UI, but then kind of quickly realized that this has implications and could be scaled across to other external facing users as well. I think that kind of transitions to one of the questions we had from Mohammed. How did you convince your external vendors to shift to use the interface on Retool? And I know this may kind of be a sneak peek into your demo, but love to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Sure. So just a little bit of background on our internal engineering team. So when we started this project, the majority of our engineering team was actually through third-party partners. So we have three distinct vendors that we partner with for engineering delivery, the core of which is actually a nearshore team based out of Bogota, Colombia. Two others are US-based domestic teams that we use for very targeted, specific project work. As we adopted Retool, when we began this project, so I remember it was February 26th. I remember when we sat down and began the conversation. It was me, our Chief Product and Technology Officer and founder, Larry Parker, and our Director of Cloud Infrastructure, Anthony Bayo. We sat down with our engineering team and said, guys, this is the direction that we want to go. And we did it in the context of an evaluation that team had already performed around the total platform migration from AWS over to Google Cloud. That team had been looking at the migration project and estimating it for about 2 months prior. And what they had come back with was a plan to fully deploy and be completed with that project by February of 2023. And so when we went back to them, we said, look, guys, we actually have some ideas on how we can go faster and how we still need to maintain the current team size. We still need to maintain that velocity, but we have a very specific way that we want to try to approach this project. And long story short, our existing development teams effectively became almost exclusively focused on back-end development. So all of the front-end UI work that we would have done through React or Angular. Instead, it went into Retool, and that freed up a lot of our resources to move over into API creation, data model creation, backend services, and so forth. So, the team really, I give a lot of credit to that team. We have excellent engineering partners, and they took the ball and ran with it. We're really positive about the whole approach. I've been in other places in past lives where maybe you'd get a little bit more of a raised eyebrow if you came with that kind of a bold project approach. But we were very fortunate in that the nature of our relationship and the credibility that we had built as an internal team with our partners, allowed us to go forward with a project that aggressive of a statement. So we challenged the team at the time to try to roll out the project by June. We ended up rolling out in about early August, which for any cloud migration project, doing that in 5 months or less is almost unheard of. So hopefully that gives you some sense of our approach there. Hopefully that answers your question. But happy to follow up if you want to get any more detail.
Yeah, that was awesome. Appreciate that, Mike, going into the details on that. Seeing a lot of really great questions in the chat here. Feel free to keep writing them in. I think now this is a great transition, Mike. I'll turn it over to you to screen share, and let's run through some of the demos that you have. I think that'll answer a lot of the questions people have, and then we'll have dedicated time after that to really just kind of address them one by one. But Mike, with that, I will give you screen share access.
Sounds good. Yeah, go ahead and pick the right one here. There we go. Okay. Obviously, everybody's seen this view before, so I won't stay on it for too long. But I start here to illustrate that as the diagram showed, we have a number of different interfaces for different stakeholders. But
sorry, Mike, really quick. Sorry, do you mind zooming in a few tabs just so we
sure.
can have it a bit bigger? So
I start here mainly to illustrate that this is a complex application with a large number of screens. We have deep configuration options. There are highly complex pages that I'll show in a minute. Some of these pages will range anywhere from about 45 to 50 queries or actions per page. So if you're looking at our query list, that you add up the total queries and triggers or transformers, we'll be reaching somewhere between 90 and 100 items on any given page. So one of the things that we've been particularly impressed with is Retool's ability to quickly build very simple operational utilities, but also to go deep on the complex user experiences that we're looking to create for our internal users and for our customers. And so just diving in, when someone comes into our application, they will start here. So this is our internal admin UI. And it's what we call our mission control dashboard. And the first thing that you see on this mission control dashboard is just a breakdown of all of the different projects that have been referred to us, their workflow statuses, and the specific service level agreement or SLA designation, green, yellow, amber, red, that those projects currently sit within. So this allows our operations team to track where projects are and how healthy they are, how responsive we're being, how responsive the contractor is being to the homeowner throughout the entire process. And so if we click on any one of these items, it'll load the detail down here. It'll show us the specific records that we've selected based on the row and cell that we picked from the upper table. We can filter any of these options. We can add notes interactively, so this integrates with our backend note service that we have on top of our projects. And then we can click through and go into the project's detail view for the full record itself. There are a few other areas that we've built that just give the team visibility into recent status updates, notes added in the system. So this is really the place that our operations team goes just to monitor the overall activity, the high level activity that's happening in the system. Now, I'm showing all of this in our dev environment today, so all test data. So forgive some of the just test records, but this hopefully will communicate the concept. We're using, as I mentioned before, we're using Retool's on-premise deployment, and we're working with the GitHub integration. And so we have dev, staging, and production environments internally with a full CI pipeline set up. So happy to talk about that process as well if anybody has questions on that. So from here, inside the admin UI, we drill into the next page, and the projects page really shows us our complete list of detailed projects that have been referred to us. And so we've done some customization inside of this table. So for example, we can highlight the workflow step according to the current SLA that it's in. There's a custom HTML column implemented over here under the health status. We have a large number of filtering options that have been built here. So some of these for load optimization, we've chosen to include in an additional filters section. And we load those dynamically as the user requests them. So, for example, this metro service areas listing, this is a data set that we purchased. It has about 40,000 rows in it. So we load that on demand when the user asks for it. And you'll see that quite a bit in some of our different drop-down options that we have on various pages. So as I adjust any of these filters, it'll change the query dynamically to populate this table. And I'm going to zoom out just a little bit here for a second so you can see the full page. And then if I pick a specific project, like down here, I can collapse the table, and now I can see the detail view for that project. And inside of this given project, I can view the summary, the high-level information about the homeowner, their property address, who submitted the project to us. I can click through and look at different trades that are necessary to complete that repair, the financial information that's been entered on that project so far. I can assign a contractor in various ways. And I'll stop here for just a moment, because this piece right here was one of our most common operational challenges. This required constant attention from our level 2 engineering support team. And now we've built utilities directly in the UI so that now we no longer need our level 2 engineering support making these changes. Now our level 1 frontline operations team can go in directly and make any of these changes. So this has given us the opportunity to take a lot of very expensive operational troubleshooting and data change, data correction scenarios that would pop up in just the normal course of working with human processes, and we've been able to create those actions inside of the UI for operations team to do themselves. So I'll pause there for just a second. I think we've got a fair number of questions coming in. Jake, do you want to?
Yeah. Yes. Apologies about the screen share quality. I think there may be something going on. So appreciate you guys bearing with us. Yeah, thank you for zooming in a bit, Mike. One of the most upvoted questions from Steve is, how do you and you've shown me this before, Mike, so I think it'd be really interesting to the audience here, is how do you think about user-facing authentication? I guess kind of authentication more broadly, given that there's internal and external users. I know you have that schema you showed.
Yep.
Might be great to kind of do a little walkthrough on that.
Definitely. So yeah, actually, I'll make a couple call outs here really quickly, and then I'll go into the users piece right over here. So these are fairly complex pages, and the projects, contractors, and partners pages are probably our core interfaces. We've created all these different settings management areas. And we're building out more for our analytics and finance teams. But from a user perspective, we want to lock down certain capabilities even for our admin team, and definitely for our external users. And so the way that we think about this is there are Retool users, and then there are Westhill users. So Westhill users being users that exist inside of our own database that we track ourselves. So whenever I come over here and add a user, I'll give it just a username here. And then I'll give it a type. And that type, I think I saw a question in the chat about RBAC. We're handling permission control through a combination of our Westhill types and combination of Retool permission groups. So think of Westhill, we call them roles. So think of Westhill roles. Like for example, if I want to grant this user access to, Mike's interior as an admin, I'll assign them this role in our database. And when I create this user, it's doing a few things. First, it creates that user record inside of Westhill's user table. Then it assigns the role permission for that user inside of Westhill. Then it creates a user invitation inside of the Retool user invite table. So we're interacting with the Retool Postgres user database directly. So we're generating our own invite token. And then we basically mapped over here. Let me pop over here for a second. We've mapped all 9 of our internal roles to Retool permission groups. So when I create a role for a contractor admin inside of Westhill, that contractor admin user is also going to be set up with the contractor admin permission group. And so the permission groups inside of Retool are controlling page level access, but the Westhill role is determining data level access. So basically, if you log into Retool as a contractor admin, you'll see specific pages. And then once you open up that page, the data that you see will be dependent on the role and entities that you've been granted permission to inside of the Westhill database. So, and we're actually doing all of that in a fully branded Westhill experience. So we're overriding Retool's default user invitations. We're sending out our own Westhill branded user invitations because we're dynamically generating our own Retool user invitation links. And then we're integrated with SendGrid to deliver those email messages. So I'll pause there. Did that answer the question well? Any other detail anybody want to go into on that piece?
I thought that was really interesting. I think it's super cool to see kind of the way you guys have really built the infrastructure here to support this. I think with that, Mike, maybe it makes sense to kind of go into another app for another part of your marketplace.
Sure. So I was showing this projects list, and this shows projects that have already been created in the system. Well, there are a few ways that projects get sent to Westhill. One, our admin team can just create them directly inside of this modal, inside of their own UI. So they can submit a project on behalf of a customer or on behalf of a property owner if that's referred to us directly through some offline means. But most commonly, we'll receive referrals through a referral form, and we've set up a service inside of Google Cloud that will actually redirect from a friendly URL like this one, and this will actually route to the public URL for a Retool page. So I don't know if you can see the URL that's up here, but this was referraldev.westillglobal.com/Westhill. And now it's pointing to the full public URL with a referral partner ID, basically a query string value appended onto the URL itself. And that query string value tells us who we're adding the project on behalf of. So the typical use for this UI would be for insurance adjusters. So insurance adjusters are out working on a claim, and they talk with the policyholder and ask them, "Are you interested in us connecting you with Westhill?" Policyholder says yes, and then the adjuster fills in this form to submit the project. Okay. So this is all fairly straightforward, plain form. We're using the stepped flow here, the just standard step component, and then the user has the ability to upload files, one or more files, and then submit the project. So once the project's been submitted, the homeowner will receive a Westhill branded email from one of our backend service processes that runs in Google Cloud. At that point, that email contains a unique link that will point the user here. And so this, again, is another Retool page that we're exposing publicly, and we're specifying the project ID that should appear for this homeowner in the URL. So as part of the query string. So we've been able to use Retool's CSS branding and theming and custom components and HTML and custom controls to HTML controls to basically customize this to look almost exactly like we had it when we were building in React and Angular. So this was one of the big tests. This page right here was our big test to ensure that we could have the level of pixel perfect control that we wanted before we made the decision to adopt Retool for external users. Our contractor user interfaces are fairly straightforward. They feel very admin UI-like, but this policyholder experience, it is a BEC type of interface. So this was the one that we really wanted to make sure that we could get right. We could make it look good, and we could carry over the formatting and design that we had previously over into Retool. So here we're using custom HTML components in order to create this little image hovering over the edge here on a container. I can click through. These are just standard. These are going to be standard Retool buttons. It walks me through the process of confirming my contact information, and then it will show a list of available contractors for the policyholder to select from. Okay. And so then after the policyholder has selected a contractor, this page is smart enough to change itself and present itself differently depending on where in the workflow that project is. So these are our custom modules that we've created. These custom modules basically give us control over whether the green check mark is checked, or whether the bubble is shown in orange or white, or whether or not we're showing the full text description details. So we're able to basically create one custom module inside of Retool and then reuse it over and over again with different logic built into each one, depending on the specifics of that workflow step and when that step should be displayed. So I'll note, I think I see a comment about it in the chat. I'll note that this page is also responsive. It is built for both desktop and mobile. And then, so as the property owner selects a contractor, this is what they'll see from end to end throughout the process. And we'll just march on down through the various steps. And then contractors will log into their own interface. So we're using the permission group homes, the Retool permission groups workspace homepage in order to route external users directly into this view right here. So when a contractor logs in, they're provisioned for one of those external contractor permission groups that I showed earlier, and then they're routed immediately to either the project page or the company profile, depending on their role. And so this gives them the ability to manage their contact information, their project preferences, what trade specialties they offer, what service territories they cover. They can even design how they want their profile to appear externally for policyholders to see. So we're putting a lot of control in their hands. Now, if we go over to the projects view, the projects view could be used by both desktop users in the office. So think of home repair contractors working in an office, and they're just making updates on behalf of on behalf of their team. Or you could have an owner operator out in the field, and they're wanting to do all of this, manage all their assignments from their mobile phone. So this page has also been built for desktop and mobile altogether. So now it provides the same level of capability that you saw on the desktop UI. They can mark specific steps in the process completed. They can view project details. They can take notes, and they can upload files. So this works with, and this is intended in a progressive web app context. In the future, we have plans to make use of the Retool mobile capability to deliver a very similar experience and enable a native mobile app context as well. So
awesome.
I'll pause there, but those are probably that gives you a good sense of the high points. So property owner interface, our admin UI, the contractor interface. In the future, we'll also build one for insurance carrier program admins that's more of a reporting UI. You can see just some of the different ways that we've been able to create these experiences inside of Retool and then brand them.
Yeah, really love seeing this. It's always super cool watching you kind of go through this, Mike. I think with that, we'll start addressing audience questions. So as I mentioned, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the little questions box in the bottom right corner to the left of chat, and then Mike and I can work through them as best as possible. So how about we start with a question from, let's see, Dimitri has a good one here. It looks like you pushed Retool to the limit. Where did it start to break down in terms of features, flexibility, or performance? I think that's a great question.
That's a very good question. We did run into some spots that required optimization. So I mentioned the large number of queries on any given page. For the projects, contractors, and particularly the projects and contractors pages, with all of those queries that run at page load, we started to notice that if our backend timed out on any one of those queries, it could have a cascading effect if we were using the run automatically when inputs change feature. So the way we addressed that was we actually turned off the run automatically when inputs changed, turned it to run manually when triggered, and then enabled the page load option. And then we changed some of the load sequences together a little bit more. We also modified all those filter dropdowns that I was showing. Let me go back over to there. We go ahead and edit this page. I'll show you. Go back to sharing here. If you look at any of these filter dropdowns, you'll notice like it's empty right now. It's empty until I click on it. And so effectively we're kind of lazy loading some of these queries. And if you look down here on the event handler, there's a focus event handler. And basically we've said, if that data is empty, then run the query. After that, we don't have to run the query again. So that's helped us to basically cram in all of this data load into these single pages. We've gotten really, we've really developed a methodology for how we break down and load specific records just in time. The only query on this entire page that's running automatically when inputs change is this main table. And then if you look over in the table here, there are a ton of event handlers that change on row select. We're calling to either reset the query cache or to actually perform a run on, perform retrieval on specific data when we make that row selection. So for example, down here, if you look at all these different tabs, we don't load all of the data for every tab until you click on the tab for the first time. So I think that's one of the big tricks is as you get more and more complex with your pages and you add more functionality to those pages, just like you would do with even traditional development, you'll be intelligent about when you want to load specific data sets in your page. So that's a good question.
Awesome. One other question. It's been asked a couple times in chat, and also Dimitri asked it as well around pricing. I don't want to get too into this, but Mike, as far as I understand, there's a bespoke pricing model in place beyond what we kind of offer.
Right.
I'll say this to everyone. So if anyone has questions, these are things that we kind of handle just, person-to-person discussions. If anyone has questions or would like to learn more about this, just feel free to shoot me an email, just jake@retool.com. Or you can reply directly to the recording email that'll go out today or tomorrow, and happy to kind of facilitate that conversation from there.
And the one comment I'll make on that is when we initially signed up, we signed up with a fairly standard enterprise license approach. And then I remember we went to Emily Gray, our Retool contact, on a Thursday, and by Friday the next morning, she had a pricing model developed for us. And so we were very appreciative to Emily and the Retool team for working with us on the pricing. We were able to come up with a really, really solid approach that effectively allowed us to have thousands of external users working inside of Retool.
One more note on that. Okay, let's see. And then another question I want to go through. Ben has a question. So once Westhill built their internal tool in Retool, what steps did you take to gain adoption from employees? Was there training? Was it an email? I think that's a really great question.
Yep, work in progress. Obviously, we just launched a few weeks ago, but we went through rounds of internal training. We've sort of gone with it piecemeal a little bit. So with this being such a major transition from what we called our 2.0 product to this 3.0 product, our operations team selected specific team members to start working within the 3.0 platform. As you can imagine, this isn't just a UI overhaul. It's a complete backend rebuild as well. And so the nature of our business is such that there was some data that we wanted to migrate and other data that we did not. So we're still continuing to operate part of our business in the legacy platform. We're sort of running out the clock on some projects for about another month, and then we'll be fully transitioning over to this new Retool-based product, over that time period. So we've had a few early adopters inside the company that have been trained, that are starting to work, that are getting familiar with how everything's set up, how things operate. Now, fortunately, the feedback from the team so far has been that a lot of it's pretty straightforward and intuitive. The 2.0 product that we're coming from didn't provide a lot of the capabilities that we now have in this system. And so I think what we're finding is not that there's no operational, technical work that needs to be done. That's just the nature of any new system, but that the amount of technical support involved is actually much less. And so we've had people who are very, I think, who are encouraged about adopting the new product. And so the larger challenge has been on our external user group. Those external contractors have had to have training webinars. We've had to walk them through some of their user activations. That's something that we're still working through a little bit, is figuring out the right approach with user activation. We implemented 2FA for ourselves internally, but we're finding that our external users maybe shouldn't use 2FA. And so there may be a different approach that we take long-term there. But that's probably been the biggest challenge, is that external user training and transition. And that's just, there's no shortcut to it. It's just a lot of marketing and a lot of operational training.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Just reading through the questions again. Let's see. Oh, this is a great one from Joe. Do you have any processes in place to ensure consistency in appearance, layout, UX that or across the pages your org builds? Really curious on that.
Yeah. So we are. So a couple of things. In general, we are using Retool's theming. So if we look at the app settings, so we have a couple of themes that we've set up in here. So that provides a certain degree of consistency just in terms of style, color, things like that. Now, this was a pretty tightly compressed project for what it was. So total transparency, we had 35 people working on the back-end development, about 30 different service APIs, 3 or 4 different technology integrations. We experimented with a couple of different database technology approaches inside of Google Cloud. Everything you're seeing here in the UI was built by one person. So that made it, to answer your question, that made it fairly easy to stay consistent on UI style approach. But now we're starting to spread that knowledge out across multiple team members. And the upside is we have a very clean model. We have an easily replicatable or visible model to train new team members on. So, what's very nice is, as we're training new people, we can literally pull up the pages that we have. We can go into edit mode. We can show them how we do things. We can show them what the queries look like behind the scenes. And then they can have all of this information readily available to them as they go to implement the next feature. So they can go and look and see, well, I know this existed somewhere else in kind of a similar way. Let me go and see how they did it. And one of the things I love about Retool is, if you click on the component, you can see the event handlers and the queries that it's calling, and then you can reference everything from top to bottom. You can see the whole flow in here. So it makes it a lot easier for our UI developers to track how things are operating today and then replicate that behavior.
Awesome. Some really great questions here. I appreciate everyone taking the time to ask them. Mike, one other thing, I had a question I want to kind of talk about. So, I'm looking at the person that built all this. I guess from the storyline, you and the team were spending 60% of your engineering time really maintaining an internal admin UI. And you came across Retool, one thing led to another, and ultimately you ended up building all this yourself, and not just rebuilding the admin UI, but also building all these external facing user apps, here integrate standard UI practices and whatnot as well. What is the implication of this, or what's the impact of this been on your team, on you and your team and the business? What are your engineers, now that your engineers aren't spending 60% of their time on that internal app, what are they focusing on now?
Mm-hmm. I'll start with our level 2 technical support, our what we call our engineering support team. That engineering support team has now transitioned over to being UI, what we call solution engineers. So they are much closer to the operations team, and they are responsible for taking the back-end tools that already exist and basically modifying the UI and creating new capabilities in the UI in order to solve specific operational needs. So, for example, instead of just going in and, let's say there's a database field that needs to be updated more regularly by the operations team. Well, in the past, they would have to open up a ticket with our engineering support to make that, on a per record basis to make that change. Well, now, instead of that level 2 team basically just handling one-off requests, they're focusing on solving the root issue and on providing a core capability. So they build new tools for the operations team to just do the work themselves. Now, for our backend team, that backend team some of this goes to the dynamics of our specific business. We were working very heavily with outsourced partners, and we were going through what we consider to be surge capacity for about a year, starting in about July, August last year, through this project. So we've actually been able to reassign some of those team members. So instead of spending as much money on third-party team members for UI development, we were able to put them into back-end focus. Now much more of our work is focused on API creation and QA automation. And there's been a certain amount of cost savings as well. So I don't want to send the message that, Retool is going to cause us to reduce our engineering team size. It does allow us to go faster, but there's always more roadmap. As a product manager, there's always more roadmap. There's always more value that we're trying to deliver. And now this just allows us to deliver it faster, and allows our engineering team to focus on building a really, really solid, highly performant, scalable data infrastructure and service-oriented architecture, while giving us the ability to very quickly build new UI capabilities. And it's also changed some of the process and how we go through product management discovery, user story writing. It's a lot easier and faster for us as a product team to just now go in and prototype something, say, this is okay, customer, is this how you wanted it to work? They'll come back, they'll say, yeah, that looks good, and then we'll go and we'll implement the back end. So we've already had a couple of cases where we've worked with an insurance carrier partner. They've wanted to add in an additional feature. We've prototyped it. They gave the thumbs up, and then we took that back to our engineering team to make the back end change. So yeah, it's allowing us to be more efficient, allowing us to deliver faster, and we're spending our more expensive resource dollars on longer term investments that will pay off. So less back end tech debt, more solid service architecture, so on.
Awesome. That was amazing. We're almost at time here. I appreciate everyone asking all these amazing questions. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll have time to get to all of them right now, but I do think that we'll be able to address them at least post-webinar as well, so we can kind of follow up async. But I think we'll adjourn there. Mike, I really appreciate the time here. It's been incredible to see the journey you guys have gone on. Again, just going from, your engineers spending 60% of their time on one internal UI to rebuilding it and then just expanding so much from there and just unlocking so much value for your business. Thank you everyone for joining today. I feel like we had a great turnout and had some incredible questions. If there's any questions that people have, feel free to just shoot me an email. It's real simple, just jake@retool.com. More than happy to answer anything that people have, or if anyone's ever curious about speaking on a panel of our own in the future, more than happy to do that. The only other last thing is, if you enjoyed this webinar, we're actually doing another one with NFT company called Dapper Labs at the end of the month. We'll share a little sign up in a second for it, but if you're curious, there's that one. But otherwise, Mike, any other parting words or thoughts?
Sure. Just a couple of thoughts. I know there are a lot of questions in here, both business and technical questions. Feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to share more about what we've done at Westhill. I'll also mention that we've been so excited, the team at Westhill, about what we've been able to accomplish with Retool. We really appreciate the Retool team for their partnership. We're actually so excited about it that my role with Westhill has recently changed. I'm now actually contracting with Westhill. So I'm working in a consultancy called Proga Digital, and we are working very closely with Retool's professional services team. So if you're interested in what we've shown here today and want to talk a little bit more about what might be possible in a custom project basis, or just a consulting or retainer type basis to help your teams learn to do these things themselves, or just to go to market with a project very quickly, then feel free to please reach out to Retool and ask about the professional services that they're offering.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. If anyone has questions, you know where to find us. Just Jake at Retool. You can grab Mike on LinkedIn. You can grab me on LinkedIn. But thank you all so much, and I'll see everyone at the next webinar, hopefully. All right, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.